Hey guys, how's it going? This is Forsaken Memories 45, shorthand for Forsaken M. I know this is a little bit different because I normally do video game content with or without face cam. However, back when I first started doing YouTube content, a little bit more regularly than I do now, or at least at the time, I did mostly just face cam with a rinky-dink laptop with built-in webcam and mic on things that interested me. And it's something that I like to do is sit down and talk and have conversations. So that is what this video is going to be. And the topic of this video is going to be a response to a video done by another YouTuber, something else that I also used to do a little bit frequently. And in particular, this video is a response to the most, as of this moment, the most recent video uploaded by the YouTuber PapaGenos. If you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber that is all about Smash speculation. There's some leaks, there's some just pure speculation. He also covers like general Nintendo news when bigger things arise. And he's a big fan of getting Geno in Smash as a playable character. He has his own Discord. He kind of got really big, I want to say, within late 2018 to 2019, I want to say. He kind of really popped off. Maybe he just got recommended on YouTube a lot. Regardless, he's pretty decently sized now. He uploaded a video just recently called, and let me go ahead and check this. It is called, "Did Paper Mario Fold? I'm Torn." Haha, you know, Paper Mario puns. Or paper jokes, rather. So, it's a 17-ish minute video that I went ahead and I watched. Because I generally enjoy his content for the most part. He can be a little bit repetitive on points than he needs to be. And some of the takes he has, I don't always agree with. Some of them feel a little bit far out there in terms of what he's believing on certain character possibilities of the time. But for the most part, I definitely enjoy his content. But this video that he made was all about the release of the Paper Mario, the Origami King spirits in Smash Brothers with this recent spirits event for Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. And he talks about a little bit of other information, how he didn't get a direct like everyone was talking about, how Nintendo needs to show something soon. And about the 5:30-ish mark, he starts talking about these spirits. And the conversation is, for the rest of the video, because these spirits have been released as post-game content, that it really kind of like hurts Paper Mario's chances to be playable in Ultimate in the future. And this also ends up being a video talking about how this improves Geno's chances of getting in as playable. Geno from Super Mario RPG, of course. In case you're wondering who I'm rooting for. So, it was an alright video. However, there are some things that I wanted to talk about that I really don't agree with. Around, I want to say, 14 minutes and 40 seconds in or so, it's most of the video has been watched at that point, and he comes to the conclusion where he makes a statement about how Geno's chances right now are higher, and that Geno's more likely to get an Ultimate than he ever has been with this reveal of the the Paper Mario Origami King spirits. And I'm gonna go ahead and play that clip for you right here.
That's admittedly a very out there theory, and I could talk all day about out there tinfoil hat Geno theories, but honestly, I really do think Geno is looking more likely right now than he ever has, particularly because Paper Mario just lost the best piece of evidence he had going for him, and Paper Mario being Geno's biggest rival as a potential Mario RPG rep for the second Fighter's Pass. I really do think this puts Geno in the lead.
Now, this I take just a little bit of an issue with. And that is that he, in this statement, is implying this exact moment in time, because specifically of this spirit event with Paper Mario, this is the best that Geno's chances have ever been. And he's kind of giving off the impression that Geno's chances were, not super stellar, or that he didn't have a lot going for him up until this point, and that this specific event has just changed everything, and opened the doors wide open for Geno, potentially. And that's what I have a problem with, because the doors have always been open. There's plenty of evidence for Geno from as far back as late 2018. Things that just kept piling up. And Geno has always been very likely, and his chances have always been on the higher side, regardless of what some people may think. And it's interesting that PapaGenos decides to say something like this right at the end of giving a whole bunch of evidence that has come up over the months of speculation for Ultimate DLC. A whole bunch of evidence for Geno. I believe in specific he mentions, other than the Paper Mario Origami King spirits coming in post-game, which obviously this mindset is that it's similar to the original Spirits Deconfirmed mindset, which is, why would you negotiate for spirits to be added post-game and just spirits content, and when a new character comes with a new spirit board and new spirits in addition to all the other content it comes with? Why would you negotiate just for the spirits then, if that franchise was going to get a character as playable? Which is a rather solid argument, though there is a little bit of a wiggle room to discuss. Other than that, he mentions the fact that the Origami King spirits come after two recent Square Enix spirit events with Octopath Traveler and Trials of Mana, which I guess you could make a bit of an argument about that, but I feel like that's more of coincidence than anything. Just happens to be timing rather than little tease or hint or any kind of information to glean from that. He also brings up 7 Theory, the original portion of it, which is that the next Challenger Pack is number 7. So Challenger Pack 7 for fighter number 77 in Ultimate. And Geno is from Super Mario RPG Legend of the 7 Stars, so it's a cute little thing that could mean something, but Nintendo and Sakurai have to release characters when they release characters, and since they don't care about anniversaries, cute stuff usually doesn't, like cute little nuanced things that we would appreciate don't normally coincide with character releases, so there's not too much weight to that one. I believe he also mentions the GameStop incident, which was the whole thing where Pamela Horton, I believe that's her name, talked about everyone in her Paper Mario Origami King review, mentioned Super Mario RPG, mentions Geno, and in the middle of the video mentions that's why everyone was freaking out when Geno was announced for Smash. Except he hasn't been announced for Smash yet. And everything about Geno in terms of Ultimate nothing's been announced. His spirit was in the base game, his icon was in the base game. With no announcement, there has been no Mikashi return. And thus, it seems very interesting, especially considering they now have a new version of that video edited without that line in, as well as a major repetitive PR on GameStop doing an official comment in the YouTube comments, privating the video, unlisting the video, editing that comment multiple times. I think that leads a little bit more possible credence, but it also could just be a simple mistake with GameStop employees not being very faithful or true gaming fans, or, to be less critical, not very good at doing research. And this could just be a really bad trying to settle the situation and doing rather poorly in terms of PR. Um, I believe he also mentions there's a couple more things that he mentions. Give me just a moment here. Ah, yes, and he talks about Kakamalo, where Kakamalo has yet to be disproven. Likely won't be disproven. Personally, I believe it's real, but that's another discussion for another day. And there's a lot to talk about that specifically. May do a video later getting more in depth on all the evidence that Geno has. And he mentions this, and he gives some counterpoints. But then he also mentions, the last thing I believe he mentions is like the new little picture that Sakurai sent recently that looks like Link on the giant sword. Some people are trying to connect it with Mac from Super Mario RPG, even though I think it was just kind of a cute reference to Link pulling out the Master Sword and when he's young and like, oh look, this was way bigger than the Master Sword. Ooh, can't pull it. Though the fact that he turns specifically he turns metal on top of it, while that is a feature of the stage, I believe. It is interesting to have him turn metal while being on top of the sword, almost looking as if he's riding it, similar to how Mac does. It's really interesting how he sees all this information, and yet he still comes to the conclusion that Geno has only been likely, or very likely, with his odds greatly increasing right now. So, just quickly, to go over all the things that have popped up that are definitely in Geno's favor, to show that it really isn't just right now with this Spirit event. It's been a lot of different things. And I'm going to try to only give evidence that I feel is really solid evidence, rather than weak or what would be better known as circumstantial, where you have to spin a bit of a narrative and a story, as opposed to hard, solid evidence that speaks for itself. One of the things that speaks for itself is that there are a lot of fan favorite characters from the Brawl days and even from before, but right now Geno's the only one that really sticks out as still maintaining high popularity, still being heavily talked about, heavily requested. The community is active in a whole bunch of different ways. And since the community has been very much alive during this right period of time between the Smash 4 ballot all the way up to now, it makes it more likely to be that Geno's fan base will be noticed, as opposed to fan bases for Isaac from Golden Sun, who kind of weren't at full steam during this time, and they really kicked it into gear recently, but they haven't been like steady being loud and noticeable. Other fan favorites like Crystal, Shadow, their fan bases really haven't been very vocal, and kind of stemmed off. And when they were vocal, they were at times where it was already kind of too late. Like early Ultimate, where these characters have already been decided to be assist trophies, and development and character planning has already been done. Geno doesn't fall into that though, which is very, very positive for him. Another thing that is very good for him is that Ultimate has been specifically in its development, Sakurai and his team have been very much focusing on long-term fan requests from way back in like the Melee and Brawl days. And even those that got stronger after Brawl was released. So the window of request is like late Ultimate life or late Melee life cycle, to late Brawl, early Smash 4 life cycle. All the requests that were kind of like up and down but still really big during that time have been heard, listened, and delivered. Ridley, King K. Rool, Simon, Banjo-Kazooie, these Hero for the Japanese audience, and Dragon Quest fans abroad, these are all really big requests that have been asked for a very long time. And Ultimate just keeps knocking them out one by one. Geno is in that list with some other characters, but right now he's at the top of that list because of how vocal Geno fans have been at the right time. So this is really good for him. On the next really good thing is that Sakurai has been vocal in an interview, I believe it was early 2016 in March, where he mentioned that he knows that Geno gets a really decent amount of requests considering who the character is. So Sakurai knows that Geno fans are vocal. He sees us, he hears us. And better than that, he's tried to get Geno in as early as Brawl. It just didn't work out. But Ultimate seems to be the game where getting these long, heavily demanded characters works out. And as long as Sakurai is still interested in making that character playable, which it seems very likely considering that interview is only about 4 years old, and it was during either Ultimate development had already started, and or it was during like that small period of time that Sakurai had a break in between games. That is really solid in Geno's favor. Already mentioned Kako Mallow and how it hasn't been disproven, which is the best place for it to be right now. So that's really in Geno's favor. There's the whole Spirits Deconfirm argument. It really never was an argument because as long as DLC is happening, anything can change from the base game. But for those in the back who couldn't quite hear that from the beginning, you know who you are. Min Min shattered that for everyone who was really holding strong to that argument. Characters who are in the base game as a spirit can in fact be made playable later in DLC, as we've seen. So he no longer has that against him. When it comes to other possible rivals, Geno's really like the top of the list. He has rivals within Square like 2B, Sephiroth, Neku, and Chrono. There's a Lara Croft is another one. Square owns Tomb Raider now. But as big as those names are, and some of them aren't even really that big if we're honest with ourselves, like Neku and Chrono, there's World Ends With You is getting like increased popularity, but it's still not like a big mainstay. So Geno doesn't really have to compete with them very much. He's at the top of that list, being the most desired Square character left after Cloud and the hero had been brought in. So he has that to his advantage. He also has the advantage that Sora is more like a Disney rep than he even is Square. He's Square created, but he's owned by Disney. So they would have to work with Disney, and he could easily be considered a Disney rep. And if that is the case, he would more than likely be considered separate. So instead of picking like Geno or Sora, they could potentially theoretically have both, since he's not really a Square rep, quotations. But that's not even the big thing with Sora. The big thing with Sora versus Geno is Sora is way more complicated, and when he's featured in any games that are outside Kingdom Hearts. So Sora's best chance is actually to be kind of standalone DLC, how like characters were done for Smash 4, like Bayonetta. He would come with his own stage, music, costumes on the side, of course. Speaking of costumes, that reminds me about one of the bigger things that's in Geno's favor, which is the fact that his Mii costume still hasn't returned. Now, of course, Ultimate base game, no third-party costumes, period. But over time, they've been reintroducing the ones that they had at a lower price than they were before, interestingly enough. probably an agreement to make sure that third parties third party developers can still make money off of those costumes, even if it's a small amount. And there's been multiple opportunities for Geno's Mii costume to return. The biggest one being with the hero and the Mii costumes in Wave 2. But they ended up being all Dragon Quest focused, even though it would have been really easy to bring back a couple of the Final Fantasy Chocobo hat and Geno's Mii costume to fit in there. So, I've gone a pretty extensive list of all the things that are in Geno's favor to get into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And he has a lot of evidence going for him that has been spaced out across several months. And with every passing month, things seem to get better for him. Just one thing after another. To the point where there are a lot of people confident that he is coming, and to a lesser extent, people who are confident he's coming sooner rather than later. Whether or not that'll happen remains to be seen. But there's a lot going for him, and he's always been fairly likely, if not rather likely. Like more, I guess, if you were going by rate their chances, which I think is a little silly to put a percentage on a likelihood of a character. They're either you think they're in, or you think they're not, or you don't have an opinion. You're unsure. You know if that makes sense. But I feel like if you were to put a percentage, he's always been at a 50-50, like a 50% chance. And with the more information that comes out, the higher that percentage goes, to where we're getting very close to people being confident that he's a lock, even. So the fact that PapaGenos implies that this is the best Geno's chances have ever been, I heavily disagree with that because of all this evidence that I've mentioned. I would argue that this is in his favor. However, out of all the rivals, I feel like he would have had more competition from like Sephiroth or Lara Croft from Tomb Raider, rather than Paper Mario. No offense to Paper Mario, but it hasn't been super popular recently with its recent releases. People really like how it was set up for the older titles, and they've really strayed from it. It's made a lot of people disappointed and disenfranchised with the franchise. And because of that, Paper Mario isn't really as popular as it used to be, which also would mean that there's going to be like less Paper Mario fans, which also means there's going to be less overlap between Paper Mario fans and Super Smash Bros. Fans. Ergo, in more plain English, there aren't going to be as many people requesting Paper Mario. He's not going to be as popular as of a desired character for Smash. If Paper Mario got in, it would be more of a Nintendo promotion, first party promotion, make some money. What people would call a shill pick, than anything else. Now that I've settled that why I very much disagree with that, I'd like to go ahead and get into why I think he has this mindset, even though he wants the character so much. You would think with all this evidence that really heavily favors Geno, PapaGenos would be very excited talking about how likely Geno is, and just generally being like hype for the coming reveals. But he seems to be rather tame. Now, some of that is because he's a tame kind of dude, okay? He doesn't get super excited. That I still can't believe he got me with that fake troll video. Man, he got me good. But anyway, he's a chill dude in general. But his attitude and his mental state, they're not necessarily the exact same thing. And currently his mental state has been, and I'll put the clip in here so he can quote himself, that he has purposely lowered his expectations of Geno getting into Smash, and mostly convinced himself that the most likely scenario was for Geno to return as a premium and or deluxe Mii costume, however you want to call it, that gets a nice treatment that looks like exactly or as close as they can to Geno, unlike how the Mii costume looked in Smash 4, and possibly with a music track. And specifically, he was mentioning that happening with Paper Mario being the playable character, and that Geno gets introduced as the deluxe Mii costume with or without a music track. I'll go ahead and put that quote in here.
So trying to keep my expectations low here, my thoughts were that we've gotten Geno as a Mii costume in the past, so possibly we could get Paper Mario as a playable character, and then Geno as the deluxe Mii costume, have the Geno Spirit event add him as that deluxe Mii costume, Paper Mario as the playable character. I thought it was a pretty good balance. It would represent the Mario RPG series as a whole, which of course includes many Paper Mario games, very well, but still represent Geno, still sort of get Geno in Smash, and that's basically where I was leaving my expectations. I didn't want to overhype myself thinking Geno might actually get to be a playable character, and rather just set my expectations lower, think he could be a deluxe Mii costume, and then be pleasantly surprised if he actually was the playable fighter.
So, I also take issue with this mindset. The reason I take issue with this mindset is it's a kind of a negative outlook, a little bit pessimistic. When you have all this evidence that's in your favor, and yet you still somehow come out of it with, well, I don't really think it's going to happen. I don't think it's that likely. It really makes people wonder how could you think that way? And there's been a spread of this kind of mindset recently, especially in the Smash community, and recently with the Nintendo community at large due to the lack of recent big announcements from Nintendo, this big drought. And there's been this mindset to constantly expect the worst and then be pleasantly surprised when it doesn't turn out that way. But if it does turn out that way, you are already prepared for disappointment. And I think this is a really stupid mindset to have. And the reason I say that is, if you have the option between living your day-to-day life with a positive outlook, being mostly optimistic, and looking forward to the good things and being hopeful, and let down every now and then and being wrong, and just, recovering from that and moving on. Or the option to live your life consistently negative, expecting the worst from everything. And then when you're right, you can you justify it, so you keep thinking this way for your entire life. But when you're wrong, you can be pleasantly surprised for that brief moment before you go back to this mindset of expecting the worst. I know which one I would pick between mostly optimistic with being occasionally let down and bouncing back, to always being negative and constantly being negative, and then occasionally being brought back up to being more positive, but then going right back down to being negative. This is why I have a problem with this mindset. I think it's actually unhealthy for people. But I'm not here to tell people how they should live their lives. If you care, I think you should be a little bit more positive, look for the good in things. Don't be afraid to have an opinion or to make a statement and potentially be wrong or misinformed. Don't hide away and be negative all the time just because you could be wrong, just because things could turn out bad. Feel free to be happy and positive, and when you are wrong or when things turn out to be not that great, have that moment where you embrace that. It takes you down just a little bit, but then eventually you'll come right back up. I feel like that's a lot better for people, a lot more healthy of a mindset. And because of this mindset that PapaGenos has, I think it actually clouds his judgment a bit, which is funny because he's using this mindset as a way to be neutral for his videos, which is important because of the information he's relaying. It's important for him to have a neutral stance. but it also prevents him from being super excited about Geno's chances. So it's kind of a bad situation for him. He isn't allowed to be hyper excited or have an extensively positive outlook of the chances for a character that are really good right now, of a character that he really, really wants, because he set his expectations so low, what he thinks is realistic. And he has to maintain this this mindset for his videos so that he doesn't appear to be biased. So it's like this weird personal suffering that he's partially put upon himself, which is on him, but it's also something he has to maintain, so he maintains this character in front of the screen that people find more acceptable, rather than someone who has a little bit too much favoritism or bias for a particular character getting into Smash Brothers. Which, once again, I think is silly. I think you should be excited about characters you like. Feel free to talk about as much as you want. You can separate your bias and being excited about things that you are passionate about. If you need to separate that from what you're talking about or your job so that you appear unbiased, or are unbiased by removing that bias temporarily, that's fine. But he's a YouTube channel that's specifically about Smash speculation, and Smash speculation is all about getting new characters. So people are going to want to know who he wants anyway. Shouldn't you allow yourself to be a little bit more excited? I really think you should take that into consideration, PapaGenos. I know that you are excited. I know that you're hyped for Geno. I'm hyped for Geno. Every day I think about it, I go a little crazy thinking that, like, hey, he could actually be the next reveal. It's what makes, even as someone who's patient and really doesn't get on Nintendo as much when they have droughts, even for me, it's been difficult. It's been difficult waiting and then having something promised, it turns out to be not nearly what we were expecting, and having that happen repeatedly. I understand where people start to get this negative mindset, but you have to understand that something good is going to happen eventually. And what is happening is that people who have information are trying to pinpoint that down. Whether when it's happening or what's going to be in it, they're trying to pinpoint it. And they're having a problem because Nintendo is so secretive. And they change, and things have been changing, and the world's been kind of nutty right now. So they have to figure out what the best time is to do this. And even though people are unhappy with the information we've been given thus far, and they want more, bigger announcements, Nintendo's right now is doing the best that they can, and giving us small little tidbits rather than being completely silent. Well, I think that's about all that I wanted to discuss in this video. Went over PapaGenos' video, talking about the things that are really good for Geno's chances, and that I think people, even people who don't want the character, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I would personally encourage you to really keep Geno getting into Smash Brothers Ultimate on your radar. You don't have to be a fan of the character. You don't even have to want the character. I guess you could, frankly, you could hate the character, I guess. I just think you should keep him in here about his chances being very likely, because there's a good chance that he's going to be revealed in this Fighter's Pass, and pretty fairly sooner rather than later. So, not to come off as too pompous, as someone who really wants Geno in Smash and be like, you should just accept it, it's basically confirmed. I want to be that guy. I just want to casually mention that, hey, don't cast him out. In fact, cast him in, or whatever the opposite of cast him out would be. Reel him in. I totally fish, guys. Yeah, definitely a fisherman right here. Keep him in mind, because he's one of those characters that I consider to be inevitable. There's enough demand. The developers have recognized that demand, and they've been catering to similar demand all throughout this game's life cycle. So to me, Geno is an inevitability that he will happen. He may not be the next reveal. He may not be the next reveal. He may not even get into Ultimate, which I think is highly unlikely, but he may not even get into Ultimate. But he will eventually get into a Smash game, just because the developers listen to the fans, and that's what's one of the characters that are biggest with fan demand right now, among others. But before I start rambling anymore, this has been Forsaken Memories 45, shorthand Forsaken M. PapaGenos, just want to let you know, I still think you're pretty cool. I need you to send me one of those Geno beanies. And I don't even know if I'd wear it, but I'd probably wear it. It's Geno. I'll wear stuff with Super Mario RPG on it, so I probably would wear it. You're cool. I'll still watch your content. But feel free to be excited for Geno, man. Don't hold yourself back. Don't try to force this mindset of this worst case scenario anymore. Though it seems like you may have broken out of that with this Spirit event reveal. I just kind of wish, if that's the case, you would have broke out of it a long time ago, because Geno has always been way up there and getting higher up every day. Possibly as high as Star Road. This has been Forsaken Memories 45, shorthand Forsaken M. I gotta stop rambling or I'm never gonna stop recording this. Man, I gotta edit this thing. What am I doing? But I will see you guys, including you, PapaGenos, not face to face, but possibly on Smashboards or on YouTube with different first. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Deuces.